What is up, friends? The Motovan has power. Let's get into it. All right, guys, I officially have power in the van. What you see before you is a Goal Zero 1500X. I'm not going to get too far in depth into the Goal Zero's features. It is the 1500X if you guys want to look it up. There's tons of videos online about the features of the Goal Zeros, the X versus the Core options. Nonetheless, it is one of the most robust and featurific battery banks out on the market. So I chose Goal Zero because, number one, they're an American company and they're American made. So I really like that. I also get a little bit of a discount with Goal Zero. Nothing crazy, but it was enough for me to kind of edge in that direction versus a Jackery or some of the other battery bank options out there. So first and foremost, before I get into the details of how I've wired everything up and how the Goal Zero is powering my van, I want to talk about why I chose the Goal Zero, or specifically a battery bank option, as opposed to an integrated battery setup or a DIY. So originally I was planning on doing the DIY setup, basically building a battery box, getting the inverter, the MPPT solar controller, the battery monitor, all the things that it would take to basically make a DIY Goal Zero system. What I ended up with was everything built from Renogy. It was a 100 amp hour lithium battery, and it was $1,400 shipped. So that was all the parts that I needed, plus I still needed to build it and assemble it and wire everything up. So my Goal Zero cost about $400 more than that. So as I was looking at the costs, I was basically kind of saying, well, if I do a DIY setup, that setup is essentially a part of the van. The only reason I could make that modular is if I was to build like a cart or something and wire it all together. Way more time, way more energy. And not to mention, that's a 100 amp hour battery. This Goal Zero 1500X is 150 amp hour. I think it's more like 146 or something. But, they round up like cc's and engines, so go figure. 1500X, 150 amp hour battery. That's half more plus more features. It's a better inverter. I was only using a 1000 watt inverter. This is a 2000, so on and so forth. I looked at it really, really hard and I said, you know what? I like the modularity of the Goal Zero. I like to be able to unplug it, put it in the house if there's a storm or the power goes out. If I don't want to fire up the generator, if I just want to throw it in my wife's truck and we go camping, tent camping or something like that, there's way more ability with the Goal Zero. And not to mention, the warranty is it's a good feature. Goal Zero is a good company overall. So I went with the Goal Zero for those reasons. So now that I got the Goal Zero, let's talk about how I got this thing wired up. Number one, how am I using its power accessories in the van? And number two, how am I going to charge it? So let's talk about the accessories. What you see before you is the Goal Zero with all of the inputs and outputs that you can individually power on and off. Now there's also an app that actually, this little guy has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi that you can remotely control the Goal Zero with the app, which is really kind of cool. I thought that was a neat feature. We have input for solar charging, for all kinds of different type of charging methods with the AC plug-in, or even a 12 volt, which is one of the ways that I'm going to charge it. Nonetheless, when I want to output, what you have here is something they call an Anderson power pole plug. This is kind of like an industry standard plug that Goal Zero and lots of other battery banks use. So this is an output that I can independently turn on. So when I turn that output on with the nice few foot length of cable to allow me to move the Goal Zero around, I have it wired and fused, of course, to a Blue Sea power fuse block. So the good thing about this is everything's independently fused and it runs back to this distribution block. So the Blue Sea fuse block is mounted to the back of the driver's seat, as you can see, and I essentially have a harness that runs down through, runs up, and is feeding individual accessories. So as of right now, whenever I want to power it on, because I have the Anderson power pole connector feeding this into the Goal Zero, I turn on the 12-volt output, and now everything has power. If I want to turn on my bed fans, boom, there we go. Same with the rear vent fan, everything is powered on this side. So one thing I also really like about the Goal Zero is that it calculates based on the output how many hours left to empty. And I can change that from watt hours, amps, the number of volts, so on and so forth. So I really like that it sets me up to where if I'm using the power more and more, then I can just glance at that front screen or glance at the app. The app does the same thing. And I can calculate about how much power I have left and whether it's time to charge it. So one thing about accessories, obviously you guys have already seen the rear vent fan. It's the crown jewel. I also added the second accessory that I'm wired up is my bed fan. So my bed is going to be around here. That video is going to be coming out here in the next few weeks as I get everything wrapped up to assemble my bed. But obviously in the heat of the summer, I'm going to want some fans blowing down on me because I don't have air conditioning. I'm relying solely on airflow. With that in mind, I have these little guys that are blowing down, and that's adjustable. So good reviews overall. We'll see how well they do. And then again, as I turn them up, I can see my watt output, so on and so forth. So these guys are really cool. They're adjustable. They go different directions. And then I have the controller right here. So hopefully they're not too loud, but we'll see. Two accessories that I did not wire up because I'm not going to do that in this phase of the van. Just real quick. Number one, the diesel heater that I'm going to install will require electricity for the blower motor. I didn't wire that up because I'm not going to do it this summer. I'm coming into the summer months. There's really no reason for me to take the time and money to install a diesel heater right now. As things get warm, you know, I'm just not going to need it. The other piece is a hot water for my shower. So again, we're coming into the summer months. A hot shower is not that critical whenever it's 70, 80, 90 degrees outside. Obviously, as we get into the fall months and winter approaches of 2022, I will add those accessories and take the time to add that wiring. Because I have the extra slots on my fuse block, I can just integrate the wiring and add that to my harness and it'll be good to go. So that's what's up with the accessories and the overall wiring of the vehicle. The last thing I will say, as I said before, modularity is kind of what I'm going for. I went for that with the Goal Zero. I also chose to do that with the lighting. As you can see here, I have these little LEDs charging. I'm really happy with these LEDs. Those are the small ones. These are the larger ones. So check this out, guys. Magnetic. It has on and off button, and they're also motion sensing. Now the motion sensing, it has an ambient light switch, which means it would not turn on if the ambient light is bright out. So it wouldn't drain your battery just walking in and out of the van. It only would do it at night. These guys are really cool. I looked high and low to try to figure out a solution for lighting, and I almost did the integrated switch and all that stuff that a lot of people do in their vans, and then I would have ran it off of the Goal Zero and had a switch. But I like the ability to just pull these around and stick them wherever I want. And then of course the Goal Zero, as you can see, I can use the USB plugs to just charge them up. So it's a modular setup that I really like. In retrospect, I probably wouldn't have messed with the little ones. I would have just bought more of the big ones. I'll put a link in the description so you guys can see these. I've been using them for a while as I've been building the van, and these lights are great. The battery life is really good on them. The motion sensing feature works really well, and it's a perfect match for my modular design with the van. And they work great with the Goal Zero because I can just charge them on the go as I want. So that is the electronic or battery setup that I chose for the van. The last piece I'll talk about is how am I going to charge this thing. Now, the biggest thing is it's 150 amp hour. I do have a good bit of battery, but I'm not going to go like weeks and weeks I'm not living in this van, right? It's a Motovan. I'm going to be going, doing riding weekends, doing some races, and then coming home. Nonetheless, if I do end up using a lot of battery and need to charge it, right now I have two options. In here I have the normal AC plug-in, which is a way to just plug in and charge the van up, or charge the battery up. That will plug in to my OEM inverter, which is a 150 watt inverter, which is well rated for the AC adapter that came with the Goal Zero. So I can literally, as long as I fire up the van, the inverter, I get 120 watt input into the Goal Zero, and I can charge it as I can let it sit there and idle as I'm maybe running errands or whatever, going to get extra ice or food or whatever the case may be. I can do it that way. I have a 12 volt input as well, so, and it plugs into another one of the inputs. You know, there's two underneath and here, and that plugs into the cigarette lighter. So that's a 10 amp, 100 and I think it's a 100 watt input. So I do have those two options. If something were to happen with my inverter, I have the 12 volt, and then vice versa. So that's what I'm going to do for now. In the future, so I don't plan to add solar panels to the roof. You guys know that I'm not big on adding stuff to the roof of the van, just because being able to wash it in the car wash. But Goal Zero does make a Nomad kit, which is really thin and flexible, and it will fit in my windshield. So I can unfold the Nomad kit, put the solar panels in the windshield, and then feed the input as I'm riding, which 100 watts over 5-6 hours, that's a really good charging ability for that. I'll add that later. It's just something whenever I get the extra money I'll do. The main way I'm going to charge the van though eventually is I'm going to add something that they call the Yeti Link. The Yeti Link allows you to add extra external batteries from Goal Zero, or allow you to charge it from the alternator, up to 750 watts, which is really, really good. So I do plan to get the alternator charging kit with the Yeti Link, and then I will just, as I'm driving, and or just let the van idle. I mean, if I let the van idle for 30 minutes, that would rapidly charge the 1500X if I was getting low on battery. So I figure between that and the eventual solar panels, for longer weekends for riding, I will be good to go. So again, the Goal Zero Yeti is once again proving its flexibility and modularity, which I just love how awesome this thing is. So in any case, that is the setup that I chose for the van. If you guys want to find out more about the 1500X, I just encourage you to go to Goal Zero's website. They have a ton of information about the inputs, outputs, and flexibility. There's a lot to learn about these feature-ific Goal Zeros, so really cool items. If you guys got any questions for me, specifically about anything that I've done, throw it down in the description and I will respond. All right, guys, this is me signing off. Hope you get out there, get on two wheels, and ride a dirt bike. Accelerate. Signing off.